right, hi everybody. My name is Kellen. Welcome back to another awesome CIL webinar. We're here today with a couple members from Google's live Transcribe team. We can start with a couple introductions. We have Sagar and Sharlene, both from Google. Thank you for joining us today. We have Stuart James, a real-life live Transcribe user and also the executive director of the CIL. And we also have Jim and Jennifer helping us with ASL interpretation today. So thank you both for joining us. So I think we'll jump right in today with a little presentation from Sharlene and Sagar. So I'll let you guys take it away.
Thanks for having us here, Stuart, CIL, and Kellen. Thanks for that amazing intro. Today, Sharlene and I would like to talk to you about some of our products that we have been working on for Live Transcribe, the way this, for the deaf and hard of hearing. And the way this talk came about was we were chatting with the CIL about the major initiatives that they work on. And we were thinking, and that's when Stuart floated the idea, what if we also talk a bit more about what we do for Live Transcribe, what we are planning for, and what are like some behind the scenes things about it, also to like create more awareness. And so today I wanted to take a step back and help you understand like how do we think about this space. Next slide, please. The deaf and hard of hearing population is a very big population. From a WHO estimate, we know that it's about 466 million people as of today. The really concerning part is that this is growing. Like if it was a country today by itself, it would be the third largest country by population. And that would very clearly make it larger than the United States of America by population. And just in a few decades, it is considered to hit about 900 million people, or about 1 billion people in 3 or so decades, which makes it really hard for us to imagine, and which makes it really important for us to understand that we need to make sure that our products across the board work for them. Why is it really important? Let me share a story. Next slide, please. This is my grandmother and my grandfather. My grandmother, usually the matriarch of the family, she was like a really boisterous person. She would be talkative and like would really lead conversations. And across the past few decades, I saw her slowly not participating enough in our family conversations, our dinner conversations kind of stuff. And that's because of age onset hearing loss. And it was kind of really interesting to see that, because she would not participate enough, and so she became more of a passive person, just understanding, trying to grasp what people are speaking about. And it was really important for me to bring that same level of communication access back to her. And so when we finally were able to talk about Live Transcribe and release it, I showed it to her in her native mother tongue, Gujarati. And this is the first few moments after like she was reading the live captions from a table, and the delight on her face was amazing to see. She uses it quite often. It still is sometimes hard for her to figure out how to enable the app on a tiny little phone, but she's getting there, and it's slowly getting more and more important. And this is something that really underscores the greater point. That according to that same WHO study, it is estimated that 1 in 3 people between the ages of 65 and 74 have self-reported hearing loss. If you think about accessibility as like different bigger and bigger enveloping bubbles, you have the self-identified group, people who don't yet self-identify, people with that are allies and caregivers, and then of course people who have situational hearing loss, and that essentially covers everyone. And so that makes it really important for us to make sure that technology and access and communication access is available to everybody, regardless of their hearing loss or deafness. So to talk about our suite of products in this space that we are trying to like slowly make this better for everybody. I'll hand it off to Sharlene.
Thank you, Sagar. This is Sharlene, product manager also for Live Transcribe and Amplifier. So broadly speaking, there are two ways that we can access our audios. One is with captioning. That's what Live Transcribe is about, like captioning your real life conversations. And another is through amplification. And in the later slides, I will dive deeper into these two categories. Okay, so 2 years ago, Sundar, CEO of Google, actually announced live caption on one of our bigger meetings like I/O. And live caption actually works for hard of hearing and deaf users by captioning the media on your device. And since then, we've also added the ability to caption calls. So you can imagine if you're having a call conversation with your family members, you can easily see the caption on your device while talking to the other person. Okay, so let's move on to live caption sibling, live transcribe and sound notifications. So it's an app that makes everyday conversations and surrounding sounds more accessible among people who are deaf and hard of hearing using just your Android device. And I will go over how we make conversation and sound more accessible in the following slides. Okay. So to make the app more accessible to users globally, Live Transcribe actually now supports over 80 languages and dialects, and it is serving millions of people. And we're working on supporting more languages, not just with online mode, but also in offline mode. And as you can see, there are features, for example, when you're having a conversation with someone and you want to directly respond to the speaker, you can use your type back response feature to type back the response you want to share with the speaker. And there's also a custom dictionary. For example, my name is Sharlene, and usually it starts with a C instead of an S. So what I can do with Live Transcribe is I can update the dictionary to S so that it shows up my name correctly as Sharlene with S. So just very recently, we've also added a big feature, which is sound notifications. So imagine, let's say you're hard of hearing or you're a deaf person and you're at a hotel and suddenly a fire alarm goes off. There's no way that you could hear the alarm. But with sound notifications in Live Transcribe right now, you can be alerted with push notifications on your device. And the phone can also send like a flashing light. Or if you have a wearable device, like a watch on your wrist, you can also be alerted with vibration when the phone picks up surrounding sounds like smoke alarm from your hotel. And we have around 9 sounds, including doorbell rings, baby crying, and ambulance sounds. Those that you can easily know when you're using Live Transcribe. Okay, so let's now take a closer look at what you can do with sound notifications. Depending on whether your phone is on you, you can set alert with push notifications, or like I said, a flashing light from your camera, or a vibration on your Android device. And if you like to have your phone constantly monitoring surrounding sound at your home, we suggest you pair with a connected wearable, which will give you the best experience. And with timeline view on the right, you're also able to see what happened last night. For example, when you were sleeping and you didn't know what happened, and you can refer back to the timeline view. So moving on to the amplification part. So imagine you're having age onset hearing loss. What's the first thing you wish you could do? Like it could be probably you want to have something that can help you hear the audio more clear, whether with a hearing aids or with a pocket talker. But this is what sound amplifier team is intended to do. So we ship sound amplifier to help hard of hearing people to listen to real life conversations by really bringing down the background noise and boosting the frequency levels your hearing is weaker at. And in our recent release, we've added one of the top requested features, which is to support Bluetooth headphones. So you don't have to worry about the tangled wires that come with their headphones. Other than improving clarity of audio in the real world, we've also added the same capability to the music and video being played on your phone. And this is the last slide that covers where you can download Live Transcribe, Sound Amplifier, and access live caption. And also I've added the FAQs on how to enable the applications and how to use these applications. That's it. So yeah, welcome any questions if you have any.
Great, yeah, thank you both for that, really appreciate it. So I think before we get right into the questions, I'd like to kick it over to Stuart for a moment, if you could unmute yourself, Stuart, to just give a little more a user perspective. Stuart, how long have you been using this sort of live transcribe suite of services?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, first of all, I love you guys. You have completely changed my life. I lost my hearing when I was about 40, so that's about 11 years ago. And it's not totally gone. I wear hearing aids, but I'm also a lip reader. My sign language is a work in progress. So I discovered Live Transcribe probably a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, and I switched over. I was an Apple user. I no longer, I threw that thing in the garbage. And so now I'm using Android, and because of this. And one of the things what made me reach out to you guys about doing a webinar was about a couple months ago, I had surgery. And so we're in COVID, right? My wife sometimes helps me communicate, but she couldn't come into the hospital. Everybody's wearing masks. I have to take my hearing aids out. I can't hear a thing. So I was using my live transcribe to communicate with the nurses and the doctors before we went into surgery. And they were all just amazed because nobody had ever heard of it before. And so people were coming at me left and right, asking me what I was using to communicate. And so I was just sort of surprised by that and taking notes. And it was so good, the doctor let me take it straight into the OR until I was out. And then when I woke up, the nurse was holding my phone talking to me. So, you know, it's just that good. Sign language is great, and it's a great tool to communicate because you get more from it, really. But not everybody speaks sign language, right? Very few people I need to communicate with do. And so this has just been game changing, especially with COVID and everybody wearing masks because they cannot really breathe. And so, I mean, I'm on it every day, all day. It stays on.
That's awesome. Thank you for that, Stuart. Yeah, I would imagine that, I mean, this has just helped thousands and thousands of people. Sharlene and Sagar, have you gotten some? I'm sure you've had some awesome feedback from some other people who've used the apps. Would you like to share any of that? Any kind of feedback you've gotten from some satisfied customers? What type of people has this app been able to help?
Oh yeah, we do hear a lot of feedback from users. One of the reason, actually, we found this on Twitter. Like there's this guy from a paramedics guy that goes out and helping people, and just like Stuart mentioned, like right now everyone is with masks. So he's having a really hard time to understand, people, especially they are, hard of hearing or deaf. So I forgot how he knew Live Transcribe, but then he installed Live Transcribe on his phone. So, he did a post on Twitter, and certainly I think the post went very viral, and he was just saying like how Live Transcribe helped him, talking to the patients that he met. Yeah, here we go, this one. Yeah, so this is very heartwarming. When our team saw this, we're like, we need to keep working and, helping as many people as possible.
Yeah, one story that we also got in the early days was somebody reached out to us after talking about how they have like the couple, they themselves are deaf. Their partner is also deaf, so they have kids who are not deaf, and also known as codas. And they mentioned how once they had to go to the doctor because one of their kids was sick, and they could not schedule an interpreter last minute. And that's when like they pulled out this app and had a quick conversation just on the phone with the doctor, and were able to like quickly resolve the matter like much faster. It was not as accurate as a professional captioner would be or the professional interpreter would be, but because it was such a last minute emergency kind of a situation, they were willing to go with it, and they just had to repeat some of the sentences a few more times to make sure everybody was on the same page. But it was a heartwarming story in one of the early days.
So piggybacking off of that, I think we'll jump into the questions from the community now. How has Live Transcribe grown since those early days? What does it look like now compared to its inception?
One thing I would say is that we have done a lot of work in the backend to scale our infrastructure. Because of Google's prowess in Google Cloud, and because Live Transcribe is powered by Google Cloud, we were able to scale very quickly. We see now over 100 million installs across the world, and a lot of people slowly getting more and more awareness about it. Another thing that we have noticed, apart from the sound notifications feature that Sharlene mentioned, in the last year, is that we also hear stories about people using it for language learning. Like when they are using, let's say, whichever language is the second language or a weaker language for them, they might use captions to augment whatever it is, be it a conversation live or be it like media that they are consuming that does not have its own captions, etc.
Yeah, also Live Transcribe now can be found on some selected Samsung devices. So like in the beginning, it used to be like just Pixels, and people without Pixel can download from Play Store. Now, like Samsung actually sees that, how the application really helps users. So yeah, they've come to us and, asked if they can pre-install Live Transcribe on their devices. And we're also working with a few partners as well. So I can see that the reachability of the application will definitely grow.
An example that I often hear about this is that sometimes, especially like, so one of the research scientists who founded Live Transcribe, Dimitri, he likes to use captions in his daily communications. And he would say that he would ideally want every conversation that he has without telling anybody else that he wants to use captions. Like he wants hearing people to not have to make special changes for him. He does not want special treatment kind of stuff. And so he says that it's very important for us to have the hearing person. Let's say if there's a conversation between a hearing person and a deaf and hard of hearing person, then the hearing person should have Live Transcribe on their phone, easily accessible, so that they can just pull it up. And it is encouraging to have Samsung as a partner on board because like the more phones it is readily available on within just a few quick taps, the faster it is to start that same conversation with the deaf or hard of hearing person.
Yeah, I have a quick question. I'm going to jump in. By the way, my live transcribe button is the bottom right thumb, so I got it really quick. At the moment, I understand it's a large app, right? So it takes up a lot of space, and that's why it's working off a cloud, so it can work across a lot of devices. But there are times that I'm just not connected, and I can't get connected. Is there ever going to be an opportunity to buy a phone, maybe even if it's a higher end phone, where it's built in?
Yes, that is something we are actively working on. We don't have any timeline that we could share. We are like actively testing. Some of the things that we look at here are like, for example, while you're right that sometimes you don't have connectivity, but to be able to run that same like complex machine learning model directly on your device requires a powerful phone, which can often be expensive. One thing that we are very sensitive to is that the deaf and hard of hearing community has amongst like the different accessibility pillars, it has amongst the highest and unemployment rate, which means that it is really sensitive to, well, something like buying a new phone, and just for something like captioning. And so we wanted to make sure that the solution that we provide scales to most of the world, where even if you have, and it is getting true, right? So like, if you think about it, what is more likely in most parts of the world? Having a cheap or economical Android device with good connectivity, often LTE, or having a very expensive phone but no connectivity. And so when we look at it from those kind of lenses, we find that overwhelmingly people usually do have connectivity, and the audio, the data consumed is really small for live transcribe, so it very rarely incurs huge amounts of bills. But that kind of like slowly shows us that, okay, offline is important for many scenarios like parking lots, elevators, basements, like all the things that you mentioned, including sometimes people have requirements for certain workplaces. But something, if we put it in like a bigger context of prioritizing which feature and like how do we go about figuring out what will help the most number of people, the current solution with Google Cloud seems to help and help a lot of people. And we can see that we support phones all the way 7 years older from Android 5.0 plus. These are phones that we still see usage from such phones, which means that there are people in many parts of the world that cannot upgrade or do not want to upgrade, but can still get access to communication and captions.
Great, thank you for that. So I'll jump to a couple more questions from the community here. So we have a question from Paul Yeager. He wants to know what users can do to optimize live transcribe performance in a large group setting, say auditorium or a classroom, something like that.
I don't want to monopolize this with all the answers, so Sharlene, if you have something, go for it. But a quick thing, in this video's description, we'll give you a link of a blog post that the live transcribe team has written about best practices of getting the cleanest audio. The main thumb rule is that the cleaner the audio that gets into the phone, the better and the higher accuracy captions that you will get. And so if you have to use it in a big auditorium, we have seen people being really creative. In fact, our blog post shows examples of using it in a very big auditorium where the speaker is really far away and the phones that you have are in your hand. One example of people using it is usually wireless microphones. These can be Bluetooth microphones that you can pair with your phone, which we have given examples in the blog post that you could buy. Third-party devices, and as well as something like the more professional audio equipment. We have also seen people hook up the main AV system in like big events or big auditoriums and hook up the audio coming directly from the speaker's mic into a separate phone or an Android tablet for live transcribe, and then being projected or cast or mirrored onto a bigger screen for all the audience to consume captions.
I was just about to actually ask that. We're remodeling our office and we're putting in a fairly sophisticated sound system. And I was just curious about whether we were going to be able to connect it to some device at some point so that we could have it up on our smart board showing captioning for the meetings. But now you just answered that, so that's cool.
Yeah, Live Transcribe has from day one supported external microphones. And we continue to plan just for these kind of use cases.
Okay, so I have another question from the community. So some folks may have a speech disorder, speech impediment. Perhaps they speak English as a second language, and they found that sometimes auto captioning doesn't always work for them. What does Live Transcribe do to better understand and pick up on what they're saying?
One thing that we do it's a very important problem. We hear this also often in the deaf and hard of hearing community. Sometimes it's called the deaf accent, or anybody with like very strong accents in any of the languages will usually have a hard time having automated speech recognition systems understand them. And it's a very it's a hard research challenge that the whole computer science industry is trying to solve. One research project and initiative within Google that is in the space is called Euphonia. I'll put the link in the description of this video. And the Euphonia project is currently working with a small set of testers, especially people who might have ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, etc., who might have extreme speech impediments. And they are the main concept is to have somebody with like heavy accents and slowly create a specialized and personalized speech recognition system that works for them. I really hope that research project succeeds and grows. And eventually, some years down the line, we should be able to have much better accuracy for all different accents.
Perfect. Thank you for that. So I have another question from James. He wanted to know if there was any sort of a mute function on Live Transcribe. He described a situation where he's having a conversation with an elder, and they would read it back and pick up on what they read back, and it can get confusing. So is there any sort of mute function?
Sharlene, you want to talk about this?
Now we don't have a mute function, but we have a pause function. So let's say you're having like another conversation with other person, you don't want to caption the conversation, you can easily press on the pause button at the bottom of your screen.
The pause button can be enabled in the settings. It is specifically made for the deaf blind who might use a braille display, where they might need a slower pace of the captions to be able to interpret it with braille compared to what the speech velocity is. The main aspect is that Live Transcribe does not listen while it's in background. So we have found a lot of people actively like just backgrounding the app if they don't want any captions to be transcribed, and then using the quick accessibility shortcut to bring it back up in a jiffy. So that is a workflow that we have often heard people use.
Awesome. So we have another question from Michelle Rosado. She wanted to know how Google Live Transcribe could be used in combination with something like Zoom or Microsoft Teams. Some workplaces use those exclusively. So hopefully your answer won't be to just use Google Meet as a little self-promotion. But how could Live Transcribe be used in tandem for more accurate transcription than what those two services already provide?
Yeah, I was going to say Google Meet, but yeah. I talked to a few like users here in Taiwan, and I found what they do is they will place the phone and they run Live Transcribe on their devices, and they place it like somewhere closer to their laptop. So it gets the incoming audio, and then they can kind of still, look at the camera, not like you're not like steering very far away from the laptop, but then you can still see your screen and then see the caption on your device. It's kind of hacky, but then I think that's what's been helping them to do with the audio, the video conferencing that we have right now.
Yeah, it's a great hack. In fact, doubling up on that, we actually wrote about that same thing in the same blog post about best practices, including even a special adapter cable that you can get that pipes in your laptop audio directly into the phone that has live transcribe. So regardless of what meeting or conference tool you might use, and it having captions or not, you can always do that. This especially works well for when there are participants speaking in 2 different languages, because live transcribe supports 2 languages to be switched quickly.
That's exactly what I do. I have my little stand in my phone. And so when people force us to use Zoom, I use this force us because we use Google. But I also use our phone system, just to let people know, our office phone system is voice over IP. So when the pandemic hit, we were able to get our office phones on our computer. So I actually have a little caption. I don't think you can see it because my wife just read it. But I have a little conference phone style here. And I use my phone and I use live transcribe so I can have a conversation that's just a phone conversation. And it works pretty seamlessly. It's fast. And I think that's what the best part of Google Captioning is that it's fast.
If you wouldn't mind talking about Google Meet just a little bit. So does it use the same sort of tech software? I'm not very tech literate. So does it use the same sort of stuff as live transcribe? I mean, it seems to work pretty much the same.
Yes, it does. There are certain, so Google Meet uses the same research technology, essentially the machine learning model behind the scenes that is used in live transcribe. It's also used in a bunch of other similar products like YouTube, which has automated captions, which are used in multiple languages. Google Assistant often uses a similar tech. And the one major difference that I've found that the Google Meet captions can provide is that because it is part of the main video calling interface itself, it can separate out the different speakers, like wherever they are, based on who is talking in your overall tile layout.
And that's a huge benefit, actually. Because a lot of times, especially if I'm having a staff meeting and I'm not paying attention and I'm doing something and someone's talking, I can flip back and figure out who is actually asking me the question. And it's a big deal. If I use other platforms that don't do that, I can get lost in the myriad of conversation because it usually will also caption me and I'm completely confused.
So just a couple more. Just a quick one right here. Is there any option to save the transcripts of a conversation?
Yeah, there's a save function in settings. So if you open Live Transcribe and go to the bottom left, you hit the settings, you'll see Save Transcription in the lower tab of the screen. And currently we save the transcription up to 3 days. So you can always refer back to the conversations in the past 3 days.
And for conversations or transcripts that people would like to store for longer, like for archival or something else, the usual workflow that we have found people do is that you can always select all the text and then copy it and paste it in any other your favorite note-taking app or archiving app that you would like to use.
Now I have one more big picture question, but before I take us home, Stuart, did you have any other? I know you had a little list going. Any other questions for Sagar and Sharlene before my big finale here?
Yeah, I have one. You mentioned in your presentation, and I'm not sure, I got a little bit lost if it was live transcribe or live caption, that it was working, hopefully seamlessly with the phone. How does that work? Because I would love that actually.
Stuart, I think you're referring to captioning, say like YouTube video, right?
Yeah, I don't know what I was referring to, but you mentioned it working with the phone, so that's what I was jumping.
On phone calls.
Yeah.
I know
Okay,
you
on phone
mentioned that
calls.
before, Stuart.
Yes, so that's actually live caption, and live caption is pre-installed in Pixel devices. So if you have like a Pixel 3 and above, you will get that functionality. So you can just read off the caption that the other person is speaking to you through the phone.
Now I have live caption on my Samsung, but that won't work the same.
It should work the same.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I would try it. I
Yeah,
think maybe I
please.
didn't know I didn't try it, but I've got live caption on this phone, and I use that religiously. In fact, sometimes what I do, if people want to know, because I do rely on this. If I'm worried, if I'm in a really important phone call, I will actually sometimes have multiple caption options going in case something shuts down and I can back up. Even now, I'm using Google Meet captioning, but over here on the right, I've got live caption playing on Chrome. And sometimes I even have my live transcribe going just to make sure that I catch it somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, please try it out and let us know if you have any questions or feedback.
Yeah, if that works, I'm seriously gonna come and marry you or something, like buy your house. Whatever I can do. Marrying is probably not a good incentive, but like, buy your house or car or something.
Live caption, especially if you use a line with VoIP, live caption is now also available in the Chrome browser and Chrome OS. So we have also heard people using it for calls on a computer, wherever they are.
All right, so just to take us home here, I asked you towards the beginning how far Live Transcribe has come in the last few years. Where is Live Transcribe going? How do you think it'll be better? How will it look different in the next 5 to 10 years?
So, I mean, I already mentioned that we are working on like offline support. We don't have any timeline to say, but I'm fairly certain it'll happen within the next 5 years. But I think the ultimate utopia is that I would want everybody to have access to captioning tools, and more so than that, especially hearing people across the world to have awareness about different captioning tools, so that if they do have to have an impromptu conversation with somebody who is deaf or hard of hearing, even if it's situational hearing loss, then they can just pull up the specific tool that works for them, instead of like, oh, I don't know how to communicate now.
Yeah, for me, I think the dream, future planning kind of thing is like Sagar said, like you don't have to feel like you have to enable an application to be able to understand conversation that's going on around you. So it can be more cohesive, and the experience can be more seamless using like different devices that Google has or other partners have. So I think that will be one of my dreams if it can come true in the next 5-10 years.
That I was just going to say the same thing. I would love at some point in the future, however long it takes, not to have to hold my phone up and like maybe wear some glasses and be able to see the captioning, so it was a little bit more seamless. I do want to say I think you guys undersold yourself. When I do I can read a little bit of sign language, and that tends to be the best if you speak it, because you get a lot of the other stuff that goes on. But in terms of captioning, you guys tend to be more accurate and faster than the live captioners. And that's no offense to my friends who are live captioners, but we've almost entirely switched over to just using your technology.
Thank you. That's an amazing endorsement, and it's great to hear that our project is helping people communicate.
it's just amazing. I mean, like it's just amazing. We when the pandemic hit, we decided as a company that we were going to use Google Meets exclusively. So we didn't even allow Zoom to be activated in anybody's computers. So we had to go to Google because it was accessible. And Zoom wasn't. And so we're a disability organization. Accessibility should be our thing. And you guys, as far as I'm concerned, are best in class. And just no doubt.
Awesome. I think that's a great place to end. So thank you both for coming out and talking today, Stuart, Jim, Jennifer, our ASL interpreters. Thank you so much for coming out. If you have any questions, feel free to drop a comment below. I believe this will be on YouTube. So drop a comment below, or feel free to email the CIL at info@thecil.org. And thank you so much. Thank you again.
Thank you for having us.
All right, take care, everyone.